Well, welcome back to another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse, and another big shout out to the Fusebox Show, which you guys should check out, thefuseboxshow.com. I was found this in the back room. This is called it's a copy of Screw, obviously, but it's called Organized Crime in Sex: Parasites of Porn Exposed. It's a special report. And usually you expect some kind of weird fucking bullshit, but this is anything but. This is Al Goldstein and Jim Buckley were running this, and he says, in the 6 years of publishing, this marks the most important issue we've ever done. The lead article in this week's Screw by my partner Jim Buckley on the efforts of the criminal elements to muscle into the porn business is the most totally honest picture of how the goons work that you would ever see in print. Not to go into detail, because sometimes Al is given to like ranting and raving and things like that, but it seems that, there were legit film companies that were shooting porn. This is from 1974, so everything was pretty much, in that gray area still. Plus, Al also goes on to say that, the Nixon-appointed Supreme Court was very much biased toward any of this stuff. And they mentioned several film distributors, or films and companies like Mitchell Brothers and Mammoth Films. And Mammoth Films was run by Peter Locke, who that name sounds familiar from The Hills Have Eyes. And of course, Wes Craven, who directed The Hills Have Eyes, was into porn way before The Hills Have Eyes. You probably remember that The Last House on the Left was supposed to be a hardcore roughie. So, and there's also a European print, supposedly, of his film Angela the Fireworks Woman, or whatever the hell it was, that basically Wes is doing the deed in the film. Of course, it's not in the American print, but be that as it may. But anyway, it goes into an interview here with Artie Mitchell, who was approached by a guy named Bobby DeSalvo, who wanted to talk to him about Behind the Green Door. And basically, Bobby DeSalvo told him he had a duplicate print, and he wanted in, and if he wasn't let in, there would be hundreds of these duplicate prints floating around. Well, of course, being that they were a business, they went to the law. The law, of course, couldn't help them, because the law point blankly told them that, we'll be after you too. So the thing was, the reason they found out about this stuff was they were doing their own bookings of Behind the Green Door, and they found a couple of theaters where they hadn't booked it in, and informed the theaters that they were basically running a copyright infringement and a bootleg print, and a couple of theaters stopped, some others didn't. The thing was, these guys basically would grab the hot porn film. Devil and Miss Jones and Deep Throat were already grabbed. They've been duped to shit. Even to the point with the 8mm stuff, because I remember I used to sell a box set of all four of the Deep Throat reels, which was a condensed version, but it had a green tint to it. And a lot of people bitched about that. And I found other films that I had picked up, through various places had weird off-color things. As a matter of fact, the Screw Al Goldstein produced, It Happened in Hollywood, was duped, and Al basically told his readers that if you see this film and if it's any way, shape, or form off color, messed up, or whatever, please contact us immediately and we'll go after the theater. So that's what happened. The thing was, these things were leased out, and the duplicators basically sold a print for whatever. There was even something happened where the cops in parentheses basically raided this theater that was showing Deep Throat, and just went into the projection booth and grabbed the print and took off. And that print was being duped later on. The duping process, I honestly don't know how it works. I'm assuming someone basically sets up the film and has it running while another camera records it, photographs it, and then there's a negative, whatever, but it's always a shade off in the original. I've had, 16mm prints of regular movies that were dupe prints. Some were good, some were bad. Usually they're bad. They're off, out of focus sometimes and whatever. But that's what they were dealing with, and they, like I said, they would, book their own stuff and, track down where it's going. If they saw a theater that was showing something that hadn't been booked through them, they would call the theater and raise a stink. And they said sometimes, the theaters didn't give a shit because it was all off the books. There was no record of them buying a print of Deep Throat for a couple $100 and then basically running it into the ground, and no royalties were paid or anything. So I know organized crime is involved in the whole thing. I'm not fucking stupid. I guess there was some guys that were trying to play it on the legit and were getting knocked off by other mobsters. I think there's a quote in here. Where the hell was it? The problem with trying to keep out the shoddy and corrupt marginal gangsters and the semi-gangsters from the smut business is on a certain level that we play into the hands of the censors. Those who are against your sexual freedom and who try to circumcise the kind of films, books, and women you can go to bed with and have always use the argument that the mafia is running the business. That's a lie. Screw is owned by two people and by two people only. Jim Buckley owns 50% and I own 50%. And nobody tells us what to do. So, there's one. And I know that after, Buckley had left and there was, issues going back with the mob with, reviews on films and stuff like that, that eventually Al had to make a deal with Star Distributors to distribute his magazine. And of course, Star Distributors was run by Robert DiBianardo, who controlled all the porn in New York City. So eventually they were in, and, things happen, but it's such a contrived thing that here you have basically crooks ripping off crooks, which what it comes down to, because '74 everything was still a gray area. I might have hit on this before. I don't remember. I remember writing an article about it in Purgatory, but I just was cleaning. Like I said, I'm cleaning out the back, and I just came across this, and I thought it was interesting because, films were being duped, and we didn't really think about it. But the minute VHS hit the fucking streets, I mean, come on. Basically, a porn tape back then, a feature was $100. But if you walked down Broadway, you would see clamshells with that box wrapped around in it for $39.95 or 3 for $100, a bargain. So that was always going on, and I actually think DVD made it even easier. But what the hell? No matter what you do, in terms of entertainment, somebody's going to rip you off. It seems. So it's just interesting. Like I said, this goes. This is Screw issue number 283, and the date in it is August of 1974. So, basically a couple years after, Deep Throat kicked open the door, so to speak. So I just find, the whole history of it interesting because, the law wasn't going to get involved unless it was to actually bust the guys making and showing the films. The guys duplicating it, they could give a shit less, it seemed. So there's a lot. Too bad I can't reproduce this or send it out because it's a pretty interesting article about the whole thing, and Artie Mitchell basically stood up to the whole thing and said, no, you're not going to do this. He goes, because somebody goes, well, why don't you just pay him off and be done with it? He goes, because if I pay him off for Behind the Green Door, they're going to be after the next thing I make. He goes, no, you got to keep him away. So, again, I found this, a little bit interesting myself that all this stuff was going on. But, all right, that's our show for today. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And we will catch you on the flip side. So, stay safe.